Hi, Dr. Marcia here, and I wanted to talk to you today about a question I've heard about people who are having difficulty sleeping. So people have been asking me, why am I having so much trouble sleeping these days? And when I do finally fall asleep, why am I having these crazy dreams? So I wanted to answer that question. First of all, this is a very anxiety-provoking time. It's a time where we're worried about our health, we're worried about our loved ones' health, we're worried about our financial situation, our jobs, our future, our society as a whole. So it's a very anxiety-provoking time, and that will affect our sleep. When we're worried, we tend to rehash things just before we go to bed, because in our biorhythms, which is the energy cycles of our day, the lowest kind of ebb of our biorhythm is just before we go to bed. And so that's the time when our defenses are the lowest. We're more likely to be worried and to be anxious and to be ruminating about all the things that are concerning us. And so we'll be lying in bed and we'll be going over all the different things that have been going on in our day and our week. We're worried about the future, we're worried about our loved ones, about money, about any number of different things, and that's why we're having difficulty sleeping. And then it's also a time where people are feeling profound grief and sadness and even some depression. And when people have depression, it can affect their sleep. Generally speaking, with anxiety, you have trouble falling asleep, and with depression, you have difficulty staying asleep. But even if you only have a very mild depression, just the slightest symptoms of it, it can affect your sleep. And so you can find yourself waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning and not being able to get back to sleep. And as well, if you have anxiety on top of it, once you wake up, you're going to be worrying about everything you've been worried about, and then you can't fall back asleep. And another thing that goes on, of course, is if you are sleeping, you finally get yourself to sleep, then you're having these strange dreams. And what happens is we process our unconscious material through our dreams. So if you have a lot of anxiety or fear or sadness or a sense of impending doom, wondering about our family or our loved ones or our community and who's going to be passing away from COVID, or, how are we going to make our ends meet? How are we going to feed the family? How are we going to pay the mortgage or the rent? Then those kinds of things as well will go into our dreams. And even though we might not be dreaming exactly about the things we're worried about or the things that we're feeling sad about, we can still have these bizarre dreams because our unconscious is processing our emotions in a symbolic way. So we're not necessarily going to be dreaming directly about the things that are bothering us, but in a symbolic way, in an unconscious way, these images are going to be working through themselves, through our unconscious mind, and we're going to be trying to find some resolution unconsciously. So sometimes we're going to wake up feeling like, what was that? Sometimes we're going to wake up feeling not refreshed. Sometimes we're going to wake up feeling like, okay, I got it out of my system. But all of it really just means that we're having anxiety, we're having depression, we're having sadness, we're having fears, and it's affecting our sleep. So what are we going to do about it? Well, obviously it's so important to get sleep because sleep helps us with our mental health and it helps us with our physical health. Our well-being really depends on our sleep, because what happens when we're sleeping is our brain gets washed by the fluid, the cerebrospinal fluid in our head. So every night when we're sleeping, our brain gets like a bath. And that cleanses and detoxifies the brain and helps us be healthy, and it helps with our longevity. It also helps with our mood and with our immune system. So we need to sleep. So what do we need to do if we're not sleeping well? Well, first of all, if we're having some significant anxiety or sadness or feelings of really not being, in a good place, maybe it's time to speak to a mental health professional to see if there's something you need to do. Like, for example, get psychotherapy or counseling, or perhaps even go on some medication to help with the anxiety or the depression so that we can sleep. Another thing is we can do some meditation before bed, just so that we can start to achieve a state of calm and peace before we can drift off to sleep. And if we wake up in the middle of the night, we can use those meditations to help us quickly fall back asleep. Another thing to do is get some exercise every day, because that will kind of burn off some of the excess nervousness and stress and help us to relax. And some good exercise would be some aerobics to burn off the steam, but also some yoga maybe in the evening to just find that place of quiet and ease so we can ease into sleep. And then, of course, we shouldn't be stimulating ourselves just before bedtime by watching or listening to the news and getting ourselves all stressed up. We also shouldn't be watching things on TV that are, very exciting or violent or upsetting, because it's going to go into our sleep and it's going to be harder to fall asleep and it's going to be harder to stay asleep. So if we practice some good sleep hygiene, it's going to help. And that means going to bed at the same time every night, going to bed in a darkened room, leaving our phones and all our technology in another room so we're not tempted to go onto our technology, because those lights from our tablets and our phones actually go right into this little gland in our brain called the pineal gland, and that's the gland that wakes us up. So as soon as that light goes on, we wake up. So we don't want that. So leave the technology outside the room, bedtime the same time, darkened, quiet room, and just make sure that we have that calm and relaxed place that we can find some rest and we can shut our eyes and drift happily into sleep. And if we're having nightmares, don't worry, it's just a normal part of the stress we're having these days. But again, if the nightmares are distressing, perhaps it's time to speak to a mental health professional to see what you can do about it if you need to talk about some things that are coming up. And there's even medication that we can take to avoid having nightmares in the future. So thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more videos, and please ask me any questions you feel you need some answers for in the comments section of these videos, and I'll be happy to answer them if I'm able to.